I am very grateful to Shant Kumar ji, Bangalore International Center, for having me here to speak on a subject I've been speaking about for more than 2 decades. And my views on this subject have been changing. And the position I have about the subject now is completely different with my initial position. Bhakti is indubitably one of the most influential cultural phenomena in the history of India. Some people talk only about Bhakti poetry, but Bhakti produced not just poetry. Bhakti produced a lot of prose, Bhakti produced a certain kind of philosophy, Bhakti produced, inspired a lot of dance forms, theatrical forms, and narratives, and so on and so forth. Bhakti expresses itself in different forms of art. This we forget. We talk only about Bhakti literature. Again, there are some general notions about Bhakti. A lot of writers who write about Bhakti, unfortunately, are not aware of the multiple voices of Bhakti. Because Bhakti spoke in what now we consider 22 official languages. Of course, English has come in recently, 21 official languages, and lots of our tribal languages also. For example, many tribal societies, I've seen this during my close contact with the Bhili tribes of Gujarat, they have their own Bhakti tradition. They call themselves followers of Kabir Panth, but the practices are different. So Bhakti has spoken in so many languages, in so many diverse ways, for over a millennium. Later medieval epic, narrative written in Sanskrit, it says, Padma Purana compares Bhakti to a beautiful girl who was born in Tamil Nadu and who grew up in Andhra and attained maturity in Maharashtra and Gujarat. But this is not even half the story. This is quite half of the story. Because Bhakti, you see, it is born in Tamil. Of course, there are 2 theories about the origins of Bhakti. One great Hindi scholar, Ramchandra Shukla, said that Bhakti was a Hindu response to the advent of monotheistic religions from outside. It's completely wrong. Another great scholar, Hazari Prasad Vivedi, was a great Kabir scholar who first produced authentic Kabir text. He said Bhakti was of the native origin. It originated in Tamil Nadu. So I don't, completely reject this foreign origin theory, because lots of differences between the orientation, the spiritual orientation of Judeo-Christian traditions and that of those of Bhakti traditions. Because the God of Judeo-Christian tradition, God with capital G, is nowhere in any one of our Indian faiths, because we have innumerable deities, 33 crores, and the Sakoti, Vachankara speak about that. And of course, it's not as anarchic as it looks, but we also talk about some underlying cosmic phenomenon which has different names in different faiths and in different cultures in India. So this is neither polytheism like what Greeks practice, nor monotheism as you find in Judeo-Christian traditions. This is something like what Max Muller called henotheism. There are many divine principles which are unified by underlying cosmic principle. So that bhakti is part of that kind of worldview, that kind of milieu. In bhakti, the bhakta addresses not the faceless, bodiless God who speaks only through thunders, if he chooses to speak, only to scare you. It's not the language of fear. Bhakti is the language of love. Another important difference. And the Judeo-Christian God has no form. Therefore, any kind of representation of the God, transcendental God, in visual representation is idolatry, and it's punishable. In the Old Testament, there is a story when King Solomon, he asked by this God, thunder God, who speaks to thunder, to invade the city of heathens and destroy all the images. So, image breaking is the second nature of Judeo-Christian traditions. But in India, we have a whole range of spiritual practices which do not reject idol worship, but they transcend, and there are two different kinds of bhakti in India. One is called Saguna Bhakti and Nirguna Bhakti. And because I have to speak about Vachanas in the context of Bhakti traditions, and today I'm going to spend some time talking about Bhakti traditions and trying to remove the wrong concepts we find in the literature on the Bhakti. Saguna means the divinity. Divinity is approached and adored in Bhakti traditions in the form of an Ishtadevata. And what is Ishtadevata? Ishtadevata is the embodiment of your desires. And you're free to imagine this aspect of the divine, your personal aspect of the divine, according to your nature and temperament. Some people want to see the divine in the feminine form, but you can't see God with capital G in the feminine form at all. He's always a he. But here in India, it could be she or he. It could be terrible or benevolent in the form of a boy, like boy Krishna, or an old somebody. So according to your choice, taste and temperament, you can visualize the divine, just as water, you can drink water from any kind of container or without the container, even from the tap. So none of these possibilities are ruled out. And Nirguna Bhakti is again a personal relationship with the deity, but here the deity has no anthropomorphic form. For example, this is called Nirguna Bhakti, and the archetype of Nirguna Bhakti in North India is Kabir, and Raidas and Dadu Dayal and so on. For Kabir, Ram is not a Puranic deity. Ram is just a name. And Kabir rejects all kinds of formal worship, whereas Bhaktas accept some types of formal worship. Kabir says, Atma Jyoti na tel na batti nishidina chamakati jaise nirmal moti. You don't even need a lamp. You don't even need a wick. You don't need the flame. Look within. Nishidina chamakati jaise nirmal moti. So Nirguna rejects this. anthropomorphic personification of the deity. But not, for example, in Hindi, Goswami Tulsidas, who wrote Ramchandra Manas, is a representative of Saguna Bhakti, whereas Kabir of Nirguna Bhakti. And if you listen to the famous bhajan by Tulsidas, Sri Ramachandra Rupalo Bhajamana, etc., he gives a concrete description of Krishna. There are a lot of Saguna Bhakti. There's something called Apadamastaka description of the deity, the description of the deity from head to foot. For example, if you read Saundarya Lahari, which is ascribed to Shankaracharya, I don't, I feel that it was written by somebody else, but it's attributed to Shankaracharya. There is the whole Saundarya Lahari is the description of the goddess from head to foot, every part of her body. And in many Sahasranamas, you find this Apadamastaka description of the deity. Whereas in Nirguna Bhakti, it's not there. But it's not always, this is not mutually exclusive approaches. They are, it's a question of proportion, more or less. For example, the Varkari Panth of Maharashtra, which was pioneered by Sant Gnandev, around 11th, 12th century, and which was later revived by, pioneered by Nandev and Namdev, which was revived by Tukaram and Eknath in around 17th century, is a combination of Saguna and Nirguna. Tukaram says in one of his Abhangs, when I looked around, I saw Krishna near a Tulsi plant wearing a Tulsi mala. When I blinked my eyes, he had become formless, disappeared. So the deity can be Saguna and Nirguna, and there's a lot of freedom for the Bhakta to conceive and approach the deity. And this, who is this deity ultimately? Is not the creator God who is the protagonist of Judeo-Christian traditions, but it's like a beloved one imagines, and we create the deity in our own imagination. This not only characteristic of Indian Bhakti traditions, but also pre-Bhakti traditions in both Vedic and Agamic traditions. When the deities are invoked, we invoke the deity, Sri Mahaganapati Mavahyami, Stapayami, Pujayami, etc. And then we say, Sri Mahaganapati Visarjayami, we dissolve the deity. Punaragata. When we call you next time, please come. Our business with you is over. You can go back now. We have given you all these things to eat and all that, Panchopachara Puja and all this. Then let's meet again. When I need you, I'll give you a call. It's that kind of approach. Bhakti is more, it's not this kind of mercenary approach to divine. Bhakti is complete absorption in the deity, and it is single-minded love. This is another important point I want to emphasize. A lot of people who write in Bhakti, they say Bhakti starts in the Vedas, everything is in the Vedas, everything comes from the Vedas. Aeronautical engineering in the Vedas and genetic engineering in the Vedas, everything is in the Vedas. But unfortunately, the word Bhakti does not occur in the Vedic literature. I was discussing with a great Sanskrit scholar, this word came to be circulated only around 7th, 8th century. And the word Bhakti had other meanings also. For example, in Dvanyaloka, when Anandavardhana talks about different aspects of poetry, these different functions of language, he talks about Bhakti. Bhakti means something which is the extended meaning of a word. It doesn't have the meaning of devotion there. So Bhakti in this sense became popular only after so-called Bhakti. I don't call them movements. A lot of people use the word movement. Some people have called Bhakti revolution. They say Bhakti was a revolution against Brahminical hegemony. tyranny of Sanskrit, some kind of pre-modern Indian communism. That's how they look at it, which is completely wrong. How can you talk about a revolution? The concept of a revolution was not there even in Europe. And some people have called it Reformation. For example, there's a great Vachanas scholar called Hiremalurishwaran. He was a professor somewhere in Canada, and he popularized the idea that Bhakti is a kind of Vachana Virashaiva movement. I'm going to contest this word Virashaiva and Lingayat later. That's why I said Vachana, not Lingayat Virashaiva. I'll tell you why later. And he said this is Hindu Protestantism. So Protestantism came where there was a Roman Catholic Church, but there was no Roman Catholic Church in India. How could there be Protestantism? When I was in the Communist Party, some of my friends used to tell me that I'm a counter-revolutionary. I said, how can there be a counter-revolution? There's been no revolution in India. So this completely untenable, this kind of view. And this idea that this Virashaiva movement was a kind of Protestantism of sorts, was first popularized by Reverend Channappa Uttangi, who was born a Lingayat, who became a Christian missionary, and who for the first time he wrote about Vachana movement in, I find the word movement very funny, in one of his lectures. He says it's like, because he was Protestant priest, so he thought it was close to his heart, he called it Protestant, and that label stuck, and some other scholars have also used this word. And Marxists, of course, some Marxists have argued that Bhakti was the state project to perpetuate slavery and casteism in Indian society, which again is very debatable. Just as some people will say Bhakti was a protest against caste system, and that's also kind of, it can also be contested. So instead of listening to what people who bring the Eurocentric concepts to bear on Bhakti traditions. And of course, Hindutva historian says that Bhakti was the Hindu response to Muslim invasion. It was a weapon to defend Hinduism. But unfortunately, the word Hindu is not used in any Bhakti text. Neither in the great scholar Shamba Joshi, who was a great cultural historian, said that the word Hindu does not occur in the Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, Agamas, Tantras, or nowhere. This appellation was, we know, it's given to us by foreigners. There was some kind of pan-Indian system of beliefs, and which was unified in some ways and not unified in some other ways. But so even this is wrong. So we have to, instead of imposing our own views on the past, we should be able to listen to what the masters of those periods say. We should listen to them. And when we try to impose our own concepts on them, we assume that because we're born a few centuries later, we are we're wiser and more intelligent than them. That need not be the case. In some ways, they can be wiser than us. So we have to listen to them first. So I'll try to explain to you what Bhakti means according to Bhaktas, not according to me, by quoting examples from one Bhakti tradition. That will be my second lecture. For the time being, Bhakti can be considered the intense love of the divine approached in the anthropomorphic form and non-anthropomorphic form. Let's stop there. And now, for a long time assumed, and many scholars have assumed, that there is a stream of Bhakti which originated somewhere in Tamil Nadu and it was flowing through centuries, which has many tributaries, and so on and so forth. But my recent exploration shows that bhakti cannot be viewed independently of other spiritual approaches which characterized Indian traditions. And Basavanna, who's one of the major Vachanakaras, Vachana poets, puts it very succinctly, and a lot of people repeat it like parrots. They don't, contemplate on the meaning. He says, "Nada priyanambaru Shivana, nada priyana lavaya. Veda priyanambaru Shivana, Veda priyana lavaya. Nada priyano alla, Veda priyano alla, Bhakti priyanama kudal sangamadeva." Father says, "Nada priyanambaru Shivana, nada priyanalla, Veda priyanalla. ವೇದವ ಮಾಡಿದ ರಾವಣನ ಶಿರಹರಿ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮನ ಶಿರಹರಿಯಿತ್ತು. ನಾದವ ಮಾಡಿದ ರಾವಣನ ತಲೆ ಹೋಯಿತ್ತು. ನಾದಪ್ರಿಯನೂ ಅಲ್ಲ, ವೇದಪ್ರಿಯನೂ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಭಕ್ತಿಪ್ರಿಯ ನಮ್ಮ ಕೂಡ ಸಗಮದೇವ." What is Veda? Because in Vedic tradition there is Karma Kanda, the ritualistic part, and Gnana Kanda, which is adumbrated in the Upanishads, about which Acharyas have written. So one is exoteric Vedic tradition, and the Upanishadic approach esoteric. And the Nada, what is Nada tradition? It is Nada Agama tradition. Some people say Vedic modes of worship came from outside and Agamic was native. I don't know, but there are two distinct traditions. Agamic traditions involved the installation of images and worshipping the deities, rules of worship, and the vastu of the temples and so on. There's a grammar which temple construction, unless it's Tata Birla temple, traditional temples are built according to a well-conceived plan, and because of that plan, the deity, the image gets empowered, it gets prana produced, etc. All this concern, this is the concern of the Agamic tradition. And there are rules about different kind of upacharas, ashtopacharas, 8 kinds of modes of worship, shodashopacharas, 62, and some people who are rich, they have more, and this is the exoteric Agamic tradition. And the esoteric Agamic, just as Vedic tradition gradually becomes more and more internalized in the Upanishads. So Bahir Yaga becomes Antar Yaga. In the Agamic tradition also, this external worship is gradually transformed into internal worship. Of course, in Sanskrit you have some Manasa Puja Stotra. For example, Shankaracharya's Shiva Manasa Puja Stotra is very famous. Atmatvam Girijamate Sacharaha Pranashiram Te Griham Pujate Shiva Bhagarchana Nidra Sancharayo Padapadayo Prakshini Nidra Samadhisthi Yadit Karomi Tattadakilam Shambho Tavaradana. Similarly, there is a shloka in Saundara which it says that whatever I do is your worship. So this internalization is there. For example, one of the important Agamic traditions is the Srividya Tradition. I can speak about it because I've been initiated into the school and I know it quite well. The highest form, the exoteric form of Srividya is the worship of physical Sri Chakra. But the highest form is called Antaryakrama, when you consider your body to be Sri Chakra and offer worship within. So this is the Vedic tradition and Agamic tradition. And they are also called Nigama Agapa Parampara. Agama is this, the devotional trend, and Nigama is the Vedic. Bhakti is different from both, Basavanna says. And what's important about Bhakti? Bhakti has no rules. It's only love. And other kinds of Bhakti, some people say you have Bhakti in Sanskrit, hymns. There is Bhakti, but this is not the Bhakti. In Bhakti, you ask for no return. is unconditional. It's like in Sufi tradition, is Majnu's love for Layla. He loved Layla and they were parted, and she was forced to marry somebody else, and Majnu had no hope of reuniting with her, but he went on loving without any expectation. That without any expectation is the precondition of love. Akkamadevi says, Chandamallikajuna Shira Haritu Viddara Pranani Magarpita Vembenu. Even if my head rolls down, I offer myself up to you freely. And this transition from exhort this mercenary bhakti to this unconditional bhakti is seen best in a Tamil poem, famous poem in Tamil written by Andal, who was the first Vaishnava poet of India. In Andal, it's called Tiruppavai. Tiruppavai means the great vow. It's a dramatic poem, it's a ritualistic poem. It's still performed as a ritual in the winter months in Tamil Nadu. And it's believed that girls who are yet to be married, if they perform this, they'll get a desirable kind of husband. Though I doubt whether it's possible in Kali Yuga. Anyway, that's the belief. So here, in this poem, it begins with Andal gathering the Gopikas. And some of them are still sleeping, they're lazy, she wakes them up. Come, let's go to the stake bath in the water body, and then go to Nanda Gopal, Krishna's father. And at first she says, if we Markadi Masa Madinda Nara in the Markadi month, in the winter months, and a beautiful day, let's do this Pavai. Pavai means the vow. And if we do this, Narayani Namakya Puraitaravan. Narayana will be pleased and give us his drum. In Vaishnavite imagery, drum is not associated with Narayana. But the Narayana that is talking about is the old kind of, he has this drum. So he will give us his drum. Then he says, if we perform this ritual, sing this song, there'll be good rains, and livestock will increase, and the lands will become fertile, and so on. And then it says, if we do this, we get lot of pongal. In Sri Vaishnava temple, if you go to Melkote, the prasadam offers is pongal. Pongal is, this sweet rice, and they make it very beautiful. Lot of ghee and jaggery and almonds and everything, raisins and so on. She says, when they give this pongal, when they eat it, the ghee should flow all the way down to the elbow. But in the last stanza, in Pasuram means stanza in Tamil, 30th Pasuram, when she enters Nandagopala's house and with the Gopikas, when she looks at Krishna, she says, we have not come to ask for anything ignoble, no gifts, just make us your slave in life after life after life. So such sentences inspire Marxist historians to say that Bhakti poetry encourages slavery. Which is completely wrong, because in society slavery is imposed, but in love and Bhakti, slavery is self-imposed. In the description, Puranic description of Shiva's love for Parvati in Kumar Sambhavam, Shiva is decorating Parvati's feet endlessly. So can we call this slavery? So something voluntary is not imposed. Bhakti is not imposed, it's voluntary. Whereas other kind of devotion in society, mercenary kind of devotion, God give us our daily bread kind of devotion, is imposed, is part of the superego. But Bhakti is not. So it's unconditional love. Now another point I want to emphasize, Bhakti has always coexisted with another approach to spirituality, which is found in Natha Siddha tradition. And this is the tantric tradition. Of course, when I say tantra, a lot of people think only of Rajneesh. It's not the whole of tantra. This tantra involving sex rites is only a very small part of tantra. Even the worship that we do in temples is part of tantra. So this tantric tradition, which is the, just as Upanishads represent Vedanta, this Siddha tradition represents Nadanta. It's a culmination of the agamic tradition, where the body becomes the temple. The divine is not out there, the divine is within you. In Tamil, Siddhas put it very beautifully. Andattile ulladu pindattile pindattile undadu andattile undu. Whatever is there in the macrocosm is found in the microcosm. Whatever is there in the microcosm is there in the macro. This is the basis of yoga. Because today yoga means doing drills in front of camera on the Yoga International Day, but that is physical exercise, that's not yoga. Yoga is a inner transformation. Of course, some people make it, to make it more palatable to the material West, call it inner engineering. Somebody may call it inner technology or inner technocracy, whatever they like it, but it's the inner transformation. So, bhakti emphasizes is the culture of the heart, cultivation of the heart. Bhavana. In two important bhakti texts, and this is another misconception I want to push aside, to think that bhakti is anti-Sanskrit. In Sanskrit also, there are very great bhakti texts like Kulashekara Alva's Mukundamala. Kulashekara Alva was the emperor of Kerala. He was a bilingual. He wrote in Tamil, one of the Alvas, and Sanskrit. And this Mukundamala is such a powerful, is a fusion of bhakti. And then in the 9th century in Kashmir, there was a great scholar poet called Acharya Utpaladeva, who was one of the gurus of the Guru Parampara of the greatest philosopher of India, Acharya Abhinavagupta, Utpalacharya Shivastotravali, and they tell us what bhakti is. And again, later, there's this Bhakti Rasayana, Madhusudan Saraswati, Bhakti Rasayana, Chandrika something. So, all these people talk about bhakti as a kind of rasa. The word rasa is an aesthetic concept. The rasa theory was adumbrated in Bharata's Natya Shastra for the first time, and later for nearly a millennium, scholars and Mimamsakas, aestheticians, theoreticians, discussed what is rasa, what is nature, and the best of Indian minds were engaged in this debate. But bhakti is also seen as a kind of rasa. Because bhakti means melting. Akamadeva says, Mana karagadavaralli pushpavanollaiya nino. Unless the heart melts, you will not accept flowers from such people. Tanu karagadavaralli gandhakshate anollaiya nino. Unless the body melts, like in love the body melts, you will not accept sandal and sacred rice from such people. So, Bhaktas emphasize this, its complete dissolution of the self in love. Akamadeva says, Appidare astigalu nugguvantirebeku. If you embrace, all my bones should be pulverized. It's that kind of melting in bhakti. And this idea of melting, in many shlokas in Shivastotravali, Acharya Utpaladeva talks about it. I'll read out a few of them. he says it's a source of joy. The Buddha said life is misery, but Bhakta says life is joy. Utpadacharya says, Pavaka Bhakti Rasayana Sekarina Makhita Marma Mandala Spuritai Nrityati Vejano Nishive Kalakalai Krutotsaha. Those who are imbued with bhakti are always dancing in joy. There's no, that's why he says, Dukkham Sukayate Vishaman Amritayate Shivamargena. On the path of Shiva, sorrow becomes joy and poison becomes nectar. And he further says, this has nothing to do with, yes, another stream of Indian spirituality I forgot to mention, the Samana Parampara, represented by Jainism and Buddhism. This is going beyond the world. Both Jainism and Buddhism, at least early Buddhism, they brought in the concept of moksha to Indian civilization. It was not there earlier. For example, in Tamil, the ancient text Tirukkural is a book of ethics, does not mention the fourth Purushartha moksha. It only talks about Dharma, Artha and Kama. The concept of moksha appears in Jaina Kavyas, in Tamil Silapadigaram, and much more conspicuously in Jaina Puranas produced in Karnataka, first in Sanskrit, Jinasena Acharya's Purva Purana, and Pampa's Kannada translation with Adi Purana. Because prior to that, our literature, ancient Tamil literature, and the tribal folk literature all over India, they celebrated only two values. In the Tamil, it was called Aham and Puram. Aham means the domain of love, the home. Puram, the domain of war and public life. Now, in the story of Jaina Tirthankaras, they reach a point where they get disillusioned with both of them. For example, in Pampa's Adi Purana, when Puru Chakravarti, who later became the first Adinatha Tirthankara, who has had many incarnations and enjoyed so many types of love and hate, and in his last life, he's become Tribhuvanaviji, the conqueror of the three world, and all gods have become his, followers. And Indra organizes a beautiful dance by the divine damsel Nilanjane. And when he's watching, absorbed in this, Pampa describes so beautifully. And one of the passages, she says, when she was dancing, all the gods and kings were wearing diamond, jewels, and her image was reflected in all those diamonds, And he says, she recreated Bharata Shastra. Bharata says something in Natya Shastra, Nilanjana is making it her own, and so on and so forth. When this wonderful dance is going on, suddenly her end approaches. In Jainism, gods can live much longer than human beings, but they're not eternal. Jainism, devas exist, but they're also part of time. Her time comes, and the sign that her time has come is that the garland of flowers she's wearing begins to fade. Indra sees it in a minute. And to avoid any kind of break in Puru Chakravarti's enjoyment of the dance, he creates with his magical powers an exact double of Nilanjana, and the dance continues. But Puru Chakravarti, because of his inner wisdom, which he cultivated in so many janmas, he can see this game, and suddenly he realizes the vacuity of beauty. And then he decides to give up his throne and become a samana, a monk. So this is where the value of love, aham, comes to grief. And in the same epic, when Puru Chakravarti's son Bharata, he conquers all the three worlds and returns to Ayodhya, which was then the capital of his dynasty. And the Chakraratna, the imperial wheel which was born with him, refuses to enter the city because there's somebody has not yet conquered, that's his own brother Bahubali. And he sends for Bahubali, come and surrender to me, I am my younger brother. Bahubali says, if you call me as an elder brother, I'll come to you. But if you call me as a conqueror of three worlds, I will not, I'll fight you back. Then he challenges Bharata and Bahubali says, wait, let's not, be the cause of the death of, let's fight together in the duel. And Jala Yuddha, Mushti Yuddha, all kinds of duels they do, and ultimately Bahubali emerges the victor. And when he lifts up his brother's body and about to throw him down, suddenly remembers the vacuity of worldly powers. He says, Bhata Mandala Khatga Lokpala Vibhrama Brahmariyappa Rajalakshmi. This Lakshmi of empire is fickle-minded. She is like a bee which is buzzing around the lotuses made of the blood-red swords of soldiers. She can abandon you any time. And then he gives up he abdicates his victory and he becomes a samana. Because moksha, kaivalya, becomes a very important value which becomes the fourth purushartha in Indian civilization. And bhakti is not in favor of this fourth purushartha. Though this vocabulary of moksha sometimes creeps into bhakti literature, predominantly Bhakti tradition is a critique of the samanic value of moksha. In one of his Vachanas, Basavana says, Chandravanante kare samani sityanage. Today, like moon, I become eclipsed. Indingya grahanavaitu mokshin nandigahulo kudalsang. Today, I become eclipsed. When will I be free, O Kudalsangamadeva? Moksha. But that moksha is not in a samanic sense. Moksha means this kind of misery of the world, not moksha in that sense. So here, moksha is not freedom out of the world, but freedom in being in love. That's what Andal is talking about. That's what Kamadi, that's what Mira is talking about. So is theologically, in Vaishnava theology, this is called Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya with the deity. Because according to Sri Vaishnava tradition, identity with the divine is not possible. It's only proximity, increasing degrees of proximity are possible. Salokya, you can go to the same world as Lord Vishnu, you can go to Vaikuntha. Samipya, you can be, and ultimately, if you are a great bhakta, you may even get the attributes of Vishnu, like his Shankha, Chakra, and all those marks of his of the deity. That's the limit. So, moksha in this sense, in the sense of being complete, Buddha describes, compares nirvana in one of the Tripitakas to nirvana is like the lamp being blown out. You just disappear nowhere. And in Jainism, they have a different version. There is different metaphors. The world is full of pudgalas, impurities, and ajiva, matter, and the Tirthankara disengages his spiritual stuff, jiva, from all this ajiva. Then like a balloon, his spirit floats up to it's a pyramidic view of the world, to the top of the last world, Samavasarana Mantapa, and there it keeps suspended. There's the important difference in Samana tradition, but in Samana tradition, there's no place for grace. And why do then Jains and Buddhists pray to Buddha? Not because they will listen to you, because in a particular kind of Jaina, there's so many worlds away from us. Our voices just can't reach there, but we think of them to purify our hearts, because we have to purify our hearts of pudgalas, of impurities. We have to disengage ourselves from. So this samanic view of moksha, Jainas call it kaivalya, Buddhists call it nirvana. This was smuggled into Vedanta by Shankaracharya, who was called Prachanna Buddha. is antithetical to Bhakti tradition. So they say, we don't want moksha. We don't want. This is precisely why Vedic Bhakti and pre-Bhakti Bhakti is not Bhakti in this sense. For example, in all this kind of, it's a Bhakti of exchange. For example, when people chant Shri Rudra, which is hymn to Rudra, is very important hymn in the Vedas. In the Chamaka part, they ask for boons. Shanchame, Mayaschame, Prenchame, Kamaschame, Kamaschame, Samanasa, Badanchame, Sheshame, Seshame, Yashastame, Vagastame, Dattachame, Kshemasame, all kinds of blessings. Shanchame, happiness in this world. Mayaschame, happiness in the other world. And then Kamaschame, fulfill all our desires. Anukamaschame, you want to fulfill one desire, you have to fulfill other desire. If you want to buy a car, you must get the cash. So that's the upakama. To get the cash, you must get a good job or must get good bribe from somewhere. So the list is endless. So this mercenary kind of bhakti has no place in our bhakti tradition. This is very important. So this a certain amount of samanic element has crept into bhakti tradition, particularly seen in what we sometimes see as the distrust of the feminine in bhakti. Though in some bhakti traditions, woman is the deity adored, on the whole, there is this anti-woman trait which pops up off and on. Even Akama Devi, in one of her Vachanas, says she's of course a woman. She's the first time where other her contemporaries consider Maya feminine. She questioned this. Gandinge hennage kadittumaye, hinninge gandage kadittumaye. Maya haunts woman as man and man as woman. She also said in one of her Vachanas, Tavitta hennan arukudidade. What if, how does it matter if the woman that one abandons, if she sleeps with somebody else, how does it matter? So this kind of anti-woman has come from Saman traditions, distrust of the feminine. So bhakti is not a consistent philosophy. It is a kind of what Raymond Williams in another context would call a kind of feeling structure, where this streak is there. But predominantly, it is different from this. And another important element of bhakti, or rather a parallel to bhakti, is the Natha Siddha tradition, which is the tradition of self-transformation. Bhakti is a path of self-surrender. Look at the appellations for bhaktas in different parts of India. In Tamil Nadu, the word bhakti comes very late in Tamil tradition. The earlier bhaktas were called Tiruttondar, slaves, Adiyar, men of the feet of the Lord. And then in Karnataka, Sharana. Saiva is called Sharanas. Vaishnava is called themselves Dasa. So this Das tradition is also prevalent in North India. Kabir Das and Rai Das, Ravi Das, etc., etc. So the Dasa, somebody who surrenders voluntarily and becomes a slave, that is a bhakta. Bhakti is about self-surrender. Natha is not self-surrender. He does not want to bow down to Shiva, but he wants to become Shiva. Even in some of the Vedic shlokas, it's suggested, Namah Shivayeti Shivam Prapadye, Shivam Shivayeti Shivam Prapadye, Shivohameti Shivam Prapadye. Earlier, you Namah Shiva, the deity is outside, then Shiva, Shiva. When he becomes your friend, don't just say Namah, good morning, good nothing. Hi, Shiva, Shiva. And then Shivoham, then you yourself become Shiva. Ramakrishna put it, it's not eating the sugar. Ultimate bhakti is not even becoming the sugar, but to become sweetness itself. So this is called Advaita Bhakti. This is, and this Natha Siddha tradition is also given another appellation in the literature. It's called Nirguna Bhakti. Nirguna means that. This Siddha tradition has been part of Bhakti. Sometimes in Tamil Nadu, when the Bhakti expressions appear in the form of Divya Prabandhams of Vaishnava saints and of Tevarams of Shaivite poets, there was a parallel tradition of Tirumandiram, which is attributed to one Tirumula, who was one of the greatest Siddhas, and he had embraced the Siddha path, which is a systematic approach, which emphasizes the purification of the body, the breath, and the mind. It's called Ghata Shodhana. So many traditions believe that body is dirty. In one of the important meditations in Buddhism is to meditate on the squalor of the body. How when we die, the body begins to rot and so on. So Buddha encouraged disciples to go to the war fields where so many slaughtered bodies were found and meditate on the mutilated bodies to develop, to overcome attachment to the body. But Natha Siddha tradition neither considers body an illusion, like in Shankaradvaita. Gorakhnath in Gorakhbani says, Sarira Saji, the body is real. And you don't need to destroy the body, make it a temple. And Devara Dasamaya Raviva, who was the earliest, second oldest Vachana poet in Kannada, puts it very beautifully. Ghatava nodedu ditava nodeleke a ghatave ditavendari salade. Why should you break the body to see its truth? Why not realize that the body itself is the truth? And Kabir also puts it very beautifully in one of his dohas. Jal mein kumbh, kumbh mein jal, bahar bhitar pani, toote kumbh, jal jali samana, ihtat katyo jnani. So when you dissolve the pot in the water, there is water inside, water outside. And even if you break the pot, water remains water. So you don't break the pot, water is still there. So why break the pot? So these two have existed parallelly. In this context, and they have sometimes collided with each other, they critique each other, and for example, in Shiva Stotravali, he clearly says, Acharya Utpaladeva clearly says that this is different from this tapasya, this is different from meditation, different from Vedas. Na yogo, na tapo, narchamakrama kopi praniyate, amaye shivamage bhaktireva prashasyate. So it's not yoga, standing on your head. It's not tapas, torturing your body. Narchanakramaha, modes of worship. Ramakrishna has a beautiful parable. There was a Thakur in a village in Bengal. When he was young, he would slaughter several goats during Durga Puja. When he grew old, he stopped it. People asked him, why you have to be more religious when you get old? You should sacrifice more goats. He said, now I have no teeth to eat mutton. So different archana kramas. This is not archana kramaha. Amaye Shiva Marge Bhaktireva Prashasyate. In the path of Shiva, Bhakti is the supreme. And it then says, is it for the Vedas or against the Vedas? Basma said, Bhakti Priyanalla Shiva. He didn't say against the Vedas or Puranas. Many of our Bhakti scholars anti-Veda, anti-Purana. No, he says, Vedagama Viruddhaya Vedagama Vidahine. Vedagama Sataptaya Guhyaya Swamine Namaha. In one sense, it's against the Vedas, no external worship. But Bhakti is also the culmination of the Vedas, because the same kind of joy that one gets after all those austerities and rituals, you just get this by reciting the name Shiva, Shiva, he says. So why do all this? So sometimes it's against the Vedic tradition, also against the Natha Siddha tradition, but sometimes they run parallel because there's a devotional element in Siddha tradition also. It's again a question of more or less. So these streams of Indian spirituality, the Samanic tradition, the Vedic tradition, and the Agamic tradition, they get transformed post 6th century. On the one hand, in Bhakti tradition, which emphasizes the self effacement through unconditional love, and the Natha Siddha tradition, which emphasizes self transformation through the purification of the body, breath, and the mind. And asanas, what people consider the whole of yoga, is only 2% of that Siddha soteriology. So Vachanas have to be seen in this context. And let me see what the time is. Yeah, I'll just give a brief introduction to what is meant by Vachanas. Here also, the literature is full of wrong ideas. Some people say Vachana is a pure Kannada genre of literature. Is the native religion of Karnataka. Our great scholar Kalburgi says, Neladinta dharmagalu, Valasegara dharma, says Jainism, etc., are migrant religions. Lingayitism is the local religion, which is complete nonsense according to me. So it's independent genre. And some people say it is another great scholar, late Professor L. Basavaraj, in his introduction to Allama's selection of Allama's Vachanas. It's the continuation of the prose passages in the Upanishads and the Brahmanas, etc. Much to be said on both sides, but I would say that Vachana is, see, different parts of India, Bhakti traditions produce new genres of literature. One of the pan-Indian genres which was produced by Bhakti traditions is called by these terms, these are synonyms, Vak Vachana. We talk about Kabira Vachanavali. In Kashmir, Lalleshwari's compositions are called Lalla Vak Vachana. And what it means I explain to you. And in Maharashtra, in Saguna tradition, it's the praise of the Lord. It's called Kirtana, Anukirtana. And then sometimes known by its the metrical form. In Maharashtra, Naneshwar wrote in Ovi, and Tukaram wrote in Abhanga form. There are two different verse forms. In Marathi, say Ovyancha, Gnanoba, Abhangyancha, Tuka. In Karnataka, three important genres produced by Bhakti and Siddha traditions are Vachana, 12th century phenomenon, which continued later, and then the Kirtana, there are different other compositions of Vaishnavite saint dasas, and then later, closer to our times, from 17th to early 20th century, another form is called Tattva Pada, is also called Swara Vachana. Vachanas are an interesting genre of composition. They can be recited, rhythmic prose. They can be sung. Great Hindustani singers like Mallikarjun Mansur, Basu Rajguru have sung these, these compositions, and they can also be performed. In fact, Vachana poets themselves never wrote down the poems. They composed it orally. It was remembered orally only during the 15th century, during the period of the Salavak Emperor Prabhudevaraya, who gave official recognition to this new faith, where they compiled an anthology. Till then, they existed in the oral transmission. So Vachana is a spoken word. And some people say Vachana is like the prose passages in Champu Kavyas in Sanskrit. Again, wrong. And let's see the definition given by Vachanakaras themselves. Basavana says one of his Vachanas. Of course, it's a very popular Vachana, but very few people think about its meaning. Nudidare muttina haradantara beku. If you should speak, your words should be like a pearl of string of pearls. Beautiful. Good verse in good order. That's how the whole is defined poetry. That's fine. Nudidare manikyada deepti antirabeku. It should be glowing like diamond. Of course, in Sanskrit poetry, they said poetry, language of poetry should have prasada guna, the pleasing quality. Then nudidara spatikada shalakayantirabeku. It should be needles sharp and crystal clear. One of the important characteristics of Bhakti, particularly Vachana poetry, like ancient Tamil poetry, not one syllable redundant. It's so precise, like Japanese haiku, almost like a Japanese haiku. But he says, these are all compositional matters, it's not enough. He says, Nudidara lingam. Yes, when you speak, linga, the Shiva says, quite so, quite so. Even that is not enough. If my words and actions don't agree, how will Kudala Sangama be pleased? So, Vachana is something, the genre, which is the embodied speech, lived speech. Elsewhere, Basavana Nudige nare hagayadare hididirpa linga ghatasapavaya. If the word becomes is the opposite of the action, antithetical to the action, the linga that you are wearing, it will become a cobra and it will bite you. Another great poet of the period, Madivada Machivara, the washerman, he says, Inti Matina, Ambigar Chavriya, the boatman, Inti Matina, Vanabaya Muttitukondo, Atana Kandipendere, Atana Testis. This is words. This is not Vachana. And Madhivada, there is a difference between Vachana and Vacharachana. If you learn the grammar, in 20th century, many people are trying to write Vachanas. Don't have us in Kannada, so many young poets are trying to write ghazals in Kannada. But then they don't know what ghazal. They just get this form of the ghazal. They don't get it. And to get the spirit of it, you can't replicate the external form of any genre. He says the content of Vachana should be one lived truth. He says, Givara Nudiyon dese, Nariyon dese. They say one thing, do the opposite. That's why Vachanakaras come down hard on the practitioner of other religions, not just Brahmins who perform yogas, yagnas, not just people who worship all kinds of deities in villages. Basavana says there's so many gods. Maraya, Biraya, Ketai, Antara, Gavedamba, Nuru Madikege, Kudal Sangamanimba, that is Salade. For all these gods, I am going to hit all these parts with one stick called Kudulas. Elsewhere it says, Deva, and Kali illa. The earth is full of gods. Moradaiva, the winning, this thing is, board is a god. Maradaiva, the tree is a god. The stone is God. The snake is God. The insect is God. There is no place for humans. The world is too full of gods. Deva Devarandu Kalira Jede illa. So the not only rich, and also he talks about Kalla Nagara Kandara. When they see the stone snake, they do Abhisheka with milk. Nijada Nagara Kandara, when the real snake comes, they run away. And they also reject the Shiva worship of earlier Shaivism, Tamil Shaivism, for example, temple worship. That's why Allah says, Deva Bandare Degula Oditta Kande. When God comes, the temple ran away. So temple is the antithesis. It is the divinity in yourself, to use the Marxist language in a quite different context, your own alienated divine essence. That's why they reject the temple. So you don't, and moreover, because temple had become the haunt of upper caste in those days. There's all these stories in the Bhakti tradition about Nandana, the Tamil Shaivite saint, wanting to go to the Chidambaram temple. He has to face a lot of opposition. The legend goes that he performed a fire ordeal and then he went to his spirit into the temple. What does it mean? He asked him to commit suicide. And then in Srirangam, if you go, there was an untouchable Madhvar called Tirupannayanar. And in Srirangam temple, outside the temple, they have dug a tunnel. And if you say Ranga, then the voice comes, but the echoes ah. So they built to tell these low caste people, you don't need to enter into the temple. You say Ranga, he will answer you from here. And of course, you have the story of Kanakadasa, where the deity had to turn to give the gesture to. So, temple is the alienated spiritual essence, and Sharanas of Karnataka rejected it. This is the context and co-text of Vachanas, the context of Indian Bhakti, Samanic, and the Agami traditions, and then the meaning of the Vachana. Vachana is the promise that I live up to my word, I walk the talk. That's what Vachana means. A lot of literary scholars don't listen to Vachanas properly. They try to analyze it as a piece of literature. And of course, there's a lot of poeticality in Vachanas, but it's a lot more than poetry. So I have taken longer than I intended. I had a lot more things to say. Maybe I could go on about this introduction in 4 lectures. So let me cut it short. As Shri said, our music has its ends. So I conclude here. And if anybody has any questions, and if there's time for that, I'll try to answer those questions.
ನನಗೆ ಕೇಳಲಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ದು ಬಿಜ್ಜಳನ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಸವಣ್ಣವರು ಮತ್ತು ಆ ಶರಣರೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಸೇರಿ ನಡೆಸಿದಂಥ ಈ ವಚನ ಕಾರ್ಯ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ರಾಜಕೀಯವಾದ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏದಾದರೂ ವಿಶ್ಲೇಷಣೆ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಹೇಗೆ?
ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಊಹಾಪೋಹಗಳಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಮೊದಲನೇದಾಗಿ ಐತಿಹಾಸಿಕವಾಗಿ ಬಿಜ್ಜಳ ತಾನು ಚಕ್ರವರ್ತಿ ಆದಮೇಲೆ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂತ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಐತಿಹಾಸಿಕ ಪುರಾವೆಗಳಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೇವಲ ದಂತಕಥೆಗಳಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಬಸವಣ್ಣ ಕೂಡ ಹರಿಹರ ನರಗಡೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣಕ್ಕೆ ಬರೋದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅವನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೆಲಸ ಕಾರ್ಯಗಳನ್ನ ಮಂಗಳವೇಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಬಿಜ್ಜಳ ಮಾಂಡೇಕಲ್ನಾಗಿದ್ದ, ಮಂಗಳವೇಡಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ರಾಜಧಾನಿಯಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಈ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣದ ಒಂದು ಕತೆ ಪ್ರಚಲಿತವಾಗಿದ್ದು ಈ ವಚನಗಳ ಈ ಸಂಗೋಪನಾ ಯುಗದಲ್ಲಿ, ಪ್ರೌಢಯುಗದ ಕಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದನ್ನು ವಚನಗಳನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಬರಹ ರೂಪಕ್ಕೆ ತಂದು ತಾಡೆಗರಿ ಒಲೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಪೃಥಕ್ಕರಿಸಿ ಅದರ ಮೇಲೆ ಟೀಕೆಗಳನ್ನು ಬರೆದ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಬಂತು. ಆಗ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣದ ಕತೆ ಬಂತು. ಅದು ಎಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಅದು ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಒಂದು ಆಶಯ, ಅದನ್ನು ಅಲ್ಗಡಿತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಪುರಾವೆ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅದೊಂದು ಆಶಯ, ಆಶಯ ಇದೆ. ಅದರ ಮೇಲೆ ಬರೆದ ನಾಟಕ, ನಾನು ಬರೆದಿದ್ದ ನಾಟಕ, ಅದನ್ನು ಅದರ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಅಲ್ಲ.
Thank you so much for the introduction. This is completely new to me. What I would like you to explain again is, you said that in the Bhakti tradition, moksha is not what they are seeking as the highest goal or end point, like how it is in Jainism and Buddhism. Could you just explain that a little bit more?
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. See, what are the. That's why you don't. In India, we can't talk about them as just as philosophies. We should look at the practice angle. What are the practices that a Jaina seeker has to perform? Fasting, asceticism, brahmacharya, self control. Because senses are false, they are misleading. Senses are a snare. So, the purpose of spiritual practice is to uh, get out of the ensnarement of senses. And Jainism gives a biological interpretation. Why do they are against violence? Because violence is impurity, and that's why you even if you do an act of violence unconsciously, you demerit will accrue to you. That's why Jaina monks don't take a bath, because when you wash your body, so many tiny insects may get killed. That's why when they wear masks, like we started doing after Corona, because when you breathe in, small insects may go into the mouth and get killed. They don't use soap, no toothpaste, nothing, because they don't want to do any harm to any living being. So to and withdraw. And the highest Jaina practice is called Sallekhana Vrata. That is the first, of course, Professor Setta, the historian, has written two very good books on this subject, Inviting Death and something else, 2 volumes. They're very good. So it is first you disengage yourself from your physical things like dressing yourself. You have to go naked. And then food. And you give up, go on giving up all comforts. When you become a Jaina monk, you're not supposed to, particularly Digambara tradition, you're not supposed to eat in a plate, you have to eat with your hands. You drink water with your cup of your palms, and so on. So then you abandon by degrees solid food. Then you abandon the liquid also. Then you fast. And then you abandon your prana also. And this is not suicide, mind you. This is Pandita Marana. You choose to die. If somebody gets corona and dies, particularly in the when he is put on the ventilator in a super specialty hospital, it is Murkha Marana. He didn't choose to die. Death was imposed on him. Whether by corona or medical authorities, we don't know. Anyway. So Jaina is Pandita Marana. You wise, you choose to disengage yourself from materiality and to transform yourself into a spiritual being. So ultimately, when you reach Kevala Gnana, that is the goal of Jainism. Buddha also talks about, of course, Buddha was against this, what is called self-torture, this austerities. He tried them and then it didn't work, so he preached what is called Madhyama Marga. You have to keep your body healthy and so on, but at the same time, you have to transcend the body and you have to transcend sexuality. There's a text called in the Majjhima Nikaya, text called Mahaparinibbana Suttam. Buddha describes Buddha's last day, and when Buddha is on, because he eaten something in the house of one of his disciples, he is having severe stomachache. He's about to. He says, "My time has come. Mara is calling me. I have to go." And then the disciples gather around him and they ask for the last message. One of the important last messages Krishna, Buddha gives to his disciples is, don't look at a woman, because they will ensnare you with their long hair, with their bewitching eyes and so on. What if they look at us? Don't look at them. Don't talk to them. What if they talk to us? If it becomes inevitable, then if she's elder to you, think that she's your elder sister or mother. Younger than you, then you think is a daughter or younger sister, and so on. So beware of women. This is the watchword. That's why when the bhikkhunis, women became bhikkhunis in Buddha Sangha, they were made to live in a different quarters. They were not to commingle. And both in Jainism and Buddhism, as far as I know, women are incapable of attaining moksha. They have to purify themselves through austerities and be reborn as men. And even men are not entitled to moksha, they have to become monks. So they become anagarikas according to Buddhism in this life, and they have to practice virtue, kusala karma, as they call it in Buddhism, and then purify them. In the next janma, they'll be born as monks, and only then they'll get the passport to nirvana. So this is a kind of netivada, na iti, not this kind of approach, which was also adopted surprisingly by Vedanta, which was highly influenced, Shankaradvaita, influenced by Buddhism. Shankaracharya's famous shloka, Shivoham, Shivoham, he says, I am not this, I am not, I am Shiva. So it's Neti Marga. Whereas Bhakti and the other kinds of Advaita, for example, Shivagama of Kashmir, or the Advaita of Vallabhacharya, of Nathdwara, this Vaishnavism, is not Neti, it's Seti. Everything is Shiva, everything is Krishna. So one is the path of inclusiveness. Bhakti and Siddha Marga, they're the paths of inclusiveness. And Jainism and Buddhism, originally, later of course, Buddhism, it branched off in so many schools of Mahayana, it introjected a lot of tantric influence. So originally, they were paths of exclusiveness. This is what I meant. Exclusiveness, Netivada, inclusiveness, Setivada. Sa iti, this is it.
ಸರಿ, ಶರಣರು ಸತ್ತ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಾಳೆಯ ಹೊನ್ನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದೊಂದು ಇದೆ. ಅದು ಬಾಳೆಯ ಹೊನನೇ ಏನಕ್ಕೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ
ಕದಡಿ.
ಕದಡಿ ವನ, ಅದೇನದು ಮತ್ತೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಬಾಳೆಯ ಹೊನನೆ, ಕದಡಿ ವನನೆ ಯಾಕೆ?
ಇದು ಪರಂಪರೆ. ಕದಡಿ ಎನ್ನುವ ಕಲ್ಪನೆ ವಚನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಬಂದಿದೆ. ಈಗ ಶ್ರೀಶೈಲಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಕದಡಿ ವನ ತೋರಿಸ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅಕ್ಕಮಹಾದೇವಲಂ ಪ್ರಭುಂದಿ ಲೈಕ್ಯವಾದರು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಕದಡಿ ಎನ್ನುವುದು ಒಂದು ಭೌಗೋಳಿಕವಾದ ಒಂದು ಜಾಗ ಅಂತ ಪರಂಪರೆಯವರು ನಂಬಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದರೆ ವಚನಗಳಲ್ಲೇ ಕದಡಿಯನ್ನು ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಕದಡಿಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಅರ್ಥಗಳು ಬರ್ತವೆ. ಅದು ಅಕ್ಕಮಹಾದೇವಿ ಕದಡಿ ಎಂಬುದು ತೆನು, ಕದಡಿ ಎಂಬುದು ಮನ. ಆ ಕದಡಿಯನ್ನು ಹೋಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಆಮೇಲೆ ಶ್ರೀಶೈಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಯಾವುದು? ಆ ಆಂಧ್ರ ತೆಲಂಗಾಣದಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಶ್ರೀಶೈಲ ಅಲ್ಲ. ಸರ್ಪಭೂಷಣ ಶಿವಗಳು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಶ್ರೀಗಿರಿಯ ಸುಕ್ಷೇತ್ರಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿ ಯಾತ್ರೆಯ ಮಾಡಿ ಬಂದೆ, ಶ್ರೀಗಿರಿಯು ಶರೀರದೊಳಗುಂಟು, ಯೋಗಿ ಜನರಿಗೆ ಬೇರೆ ಮಾರ್ಗ ಉಂಟು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಂದರೆ ವಚನಕಾರ ಮಾತಾಡುವ ಶ್ರೀಗಿರಿ, ಅಲ್ಲಮಪ್ರಭು ಅಕ್ಕಮಹಾದೇವ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ, ನಾನು ನೀನೆಂಬ ಉಭಯತ್ವ ಒಳೆಯದು ತಾನಾದ ಶ್ರೀಗಿರಿಯ ತುಟ್ಟ ತುದಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಣಬಾರದ ಕದಡಿಯುವುದು ಕೇಳ, ನರೆಯಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ತಾಯೇ ಗೊಗ್ಗೇಶ್ವರನ ಪದದಲ್ಲಿ ಪರಮ ಪದವು ನಿನಗೆ. ಶ್ರೀಗಿರಿಯ ತುತ್ತದಲ್ಲಿ ಕದಡಿ ಅಂತಾನೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತೋರ್ಸ ಕಲಿಯವನ ಕಾಲೊಳಗದೆ ಇದೆ. ತುತ್ತ ತುದಿ ಯಾವುದದು? ಯಾವುದು? ದೇಹವೆಂಬ ಶ್ರೀಶೈಲದ ತುತ್ತ ತುದಿ ಸಹಸ್ರಾರದಲ್ಲಿರೋ ಕದಡಿಯ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಒಂದು ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮಿಕ ಕಲ್ಪನೆ, ಆ ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮಿಕ ಅನುಭವ ಇಲ್ಲದ ಅದನ್ನು ಭೌತಿಕವಾಗಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಅನುವಾದ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವ್ರು ಈ ಕದಡಿ ಅಂತಾರೆ. ಇದು ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ. ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಅಂದರೆ ಬೀದರ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟಿಲರು ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊತಾರೆ. ತನು ಮನ ಶುದ್ಧವಾಗಲ್ಲದೆ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಹೋಗಲಾರದು ಅಂತ ಅಕ್ಕಮಹಾದೇವಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಆ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಒಂದು ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಂತರು ಜಗತ್ತಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಆದರ್ಶ ನಗರ, ಆದರ್ಶ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೂಫಿಸಮ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಸೂಫಿಗಳನ್ನ ಗುಲಿಸ್ತಾನ್ ಅಂತಾರೆ, ಗುಲಾಬಿ ತೋಟ. ಅಂದರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೈನಗಳು ರೋಸ್ ಗಾರ್ಡನ್ ಗುಲಾಬಿ ತೋಟ ಅಲ್ಲ ಅದು. ಅಂತರಂಗ ಇಸುಗಟ್ಟೆ ಅಂತರ ಭಾಗ ಬಗೀಚೆ ಅಂತ ಕಬೀರ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. ವೈಷ್ಣವರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೃಂದಾವನ. ಇಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಬೃಂದಾವನ? ಇವತ್ತು ನೀವು ಮಥುರಾದ ಹತ್ರ ಬೃಂದಾವನಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ವಾಕರಿಗೆ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಎಷ್ಟು ಕೊಳಕಾಗಿದೆ ಜಾಗ ಅಂದರೆ ಅದು ಅಚ್ಚುಕಟ್ಟಾಗೂ ಇಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಇಲ್ಲೇ ನಾ ಶ್ರೀಕೃಷ್ಣ ರಾಸಕ್ರೀಡೆ ಒಳಗೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ನಗು ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತದೆ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ. ಆದರೆ ಅವ್ರು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಿರೋ ಬೃಂದಾವನ ಬೇರೆ ಅದು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಶರಣರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲ್ಯಾಣ ಅಂತಾರದಕ್ಕೆ. ಇವ್ರನ್ನ ರವಿದಾಸ್ ಪರಂಪರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಒಂದು ಆದರ್ಶ ರಾಜ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇಗಂಪುರ ಅಂತ ಕರೀತಾನೆ ನಾನು. ಇನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಅವತ್ತು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಹೆಸರು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಹುಬ್ಬಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ ಹೆಸರಾಗಿ ಬಂತು. ಹುಬ್ಬು ಬಳ್ಳಿ ಭ್ರೂಮಧ್ಯ. ಒಬ್ಬರು ಅವತ್ತು ನಂಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕರು, ಕೇಳಿದೆ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂದರೆ, ಅವ್ರು ಹುಬ್ಬಳ್ಳಿ ದಾಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬೆಳಗಾವಿ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಅಂದರು. ಅಂದರೆ ಅದು ಭೌಗೋಳಿಕ. ಹುಬ್ಬಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತಿದ್ದು ಹುಬ್ಬಳ್ಳಿ ದಾಟಿ ಬೆಳಕಿನ ಊರು ಬೆಳಗಾವಿ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ಅಂತ. ಇಂದ ಶರಣರ ವಚನ ನಿಗೂಢವಾಗಿರ್ತದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಅಕ್ಷರಶಃ ಅರ್ಥವನ್ನು ಹೇಳುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಬರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಹೀಗಾಗಿ ಯಾವ ನಮ್ಮ ವಿಧ್ವಂಸಕ ವಿದ್ವಾಂಸರು ಅದನ್ನು ಇತರ ಭಾಷಿಕ ರಚನೆಯಿಂದ ತಿಳಿದೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಅರ್ಥಗಳು ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಡಿಕ್ಷನರಿ ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇವರು ಮೂರ್ಖಾತಿ ಮೂರ್ಖರು. ನನಗೊಬ್ಬ ಅವಧೂತ ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಹಿಮಾಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ, जिसके पास अर्थ है शब्द नहीं है वो बदनसीब है. जिसके पास शब्द है अर्थ नहीं है वो मूर्ख है. ವಿದ್ವಾಂಸ ಶಬ್ದಗಳಿವೆ, ಅರ್ಥಗಳಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನು ಓದುವ ಕ್ರಮವೇ ಬೇರೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು. ಅನುಭವದ ಬೆಳಕನ್ನು ಓದಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ.
Thank you so much. I had two questions for you. One is, you talked a little bit about an anti-woman sentiment in the Bhakti traditions.
Which one?
Anti-women sentiment, that there were women were
okay,
not seen.
Yeah.
And you also talked about how Buddhism itself sort of there are different spiritual traditions. I was just wondering if you could trace, has this been from the origin, I mean, in the sense of, is this common to all spiritual streams in India, or is there a point at which this kind of sentiment arises? And are there any spiritual streams in India that center women, were led by women? Or
Yes, very good question. Very good question.
One question.
Let me answer this. There are lots of woman-centered spiritual traditions in India, but there are different waves of patriarchy, you know. If you read Catherine Mill's Feminist History of the World, she says all over the world, to start with, there was matriarchy ruled the world, and when matriarchy became too tyrannical, there was a patriarchic revolution. Now patriarchy has become too tyrannical, though there has to be counter swing. So in India also, for example, in the yogic tradition, Purusha, male, is here. Kundalini is here below. So what is this hierarchy? But in Charyapada tradition is the Shakta spiritual, the northeastern part of India, and all these languages of northeast, Odia, Ahomia, and Bengali emerged from this Ur language, as it were. In Charyapada tradition, which has passed into present day Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, male is the inactive principle. Male is the active. Woman is the center. Male is the periphery. Whereas in our tradition, if you go to Chaushashti Yogini temples in Orissa, at the center you have the Shiva image. All around you have different yoginis in different poses. And what are these different states of consciousness? The still point is called Shiva. The dynamic figures are called Shakti, different aspects of Shakti. But in Charyapada, it's the opposite. Feminine is the center, and Purusha. And interestingly enough, this tradition has passed very subversively into one of the greatest bhakti texts of India, Gita Govindam. Though Gita Govindam is named after Govinda Krishna, the protagonist here is Radha. The very first stanza says, Krishna is lost in the forest, Radha, take him home. Radhe gruham prapaya. And in one of the culminating scenes of Gita Govinda, when there's lovemaking scene, Radha goes on top of Krishna, and many Odissi dancers fight shy of performing this piece. They find it very vulgar. And it's Radha who is the stable center. Krishna is vagrant, going here and there. Ultimately, Krishna's surrender, when he surrender, Dehi Tava Pada Pallavamudaram. When Krishna surrenders to Radha, that is the culmination of the epic. So there have been such traditions. For example, in Devi Puranas, the world was not brought into being by creator, by the creatrix. A lot of folk Puranas, for example, Karnataka, we have this Malay Madheshwar Purana, where the cosmos was created by Adishakti. Then she creates Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. It's a very interesting story. It's there in Chidanda Dosadi Devi Purana also. She creates this, and she first creates Brahma, and she says, I am bored, you come and marry me. She says, I am your son, I can't marry you. She gets angry and destroys him. And then burns him into ashes. And then she creates Vishnu, he says, come and marry. He says, no, you are my mother. And then she creates Madheshwara. Madheshwara comes, she says, you marry me. Then he sees these heaps of ashes to which his elder brothers have reduced. So he gets wiser. He says, okay, I'll marry you, but you should teach all your magic to me. If I marry you, I should be more powerful than you. And then she teaches him all the dance and the magic and so on. And she outdances her. And he opens his third eye and he burns her down. But Malay Madheshwar Purana, the Kavya says, he destroys her, but he can't destroy her eyes. Her eyes come and get stuck to his feet. So there's a part of that feminine that patriarchy cannot destroy. So which is so beautifully symbolic. So these traditions have been there, and we have different permutations and combinations and different clashes and conflicts. If you look into the history of not ideas, the history of practices in India.
And the second question I had was, I think you talked one time, I'm not sure if you were speaking in the context of Nadanta. You said microcosm and macrocosm, as there is an idea that the body was divine. I've read about how there are similar ideas even in like European or different kinds of spirituality.
Some people wonder, that's why there was this famous book called Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley, which was a cult book when we were young. Now nobody touches it, the barge pole. It's an important book, though it does a lot of oversimplification. In all the traditions, they repeatedly say that everything comes from the same source. The Sufis have this tale about this watermelon. 5 different boys speaking, they give it different names. And also of how mankind, all human beings were the children of the same parents, they got separated. Whether such common origin existed historically, I don't know. Whether in the sense of, how should I say, in the sense of being the immanent truth, I don't know. But it's immanent truth. It is something, it's part of the utopian dimension of human consciousness, which is the motivation for art and spirituality, because that is born out of an instinct. People talk about the biological instincts, there's food and sex, but there's a great American philosopher, Walter Kaufman, in his book Critique and Religion Philosophy, he calls it ontological instinct. You want to find out where you are in this vast cosmos. I must belong here. Where do I belong? But these days we have a map. When I went to UK, I was in what I lost my way. And then I met a student, I asked him I want to get back to my hostel. He said, open the map. He said, you're here now. I said, I'm not there, I'm here. Tell me from. So that's why when you go to new places, we feel so disoriented, don't know where we are. To locate ourselves spatially and temporally, that is the business of art and also religion, according to me.